Hello and welcome to the Nano Film Improv Podcast. I'm Dave Heron. This podcast is about my trials and tribulations associated with improv comedy and doing it, performing it, rehearsing it. So this is really a cathartic outpouring of the things that I've learnt, the things that I'm struggling with, and an opportunity to share with you and hear from you also some of the things that have worked for you, and equally there'll be some things on this podcast that you have tried that don't work for you. It's all very subjective. My experience level is, well, I've had a few years experience doing improv. I've taught a bit of improv. I've performed with a whole range of exciting and talented improvisers and learnt from sets that have gone well and sets that haven't gone well. And this is all part of an evolution for me as well. So you're very welcome in joining me on this podcast. So for this podcast, I wanted to focus on how do I practice? What are the things that I have historically done to get better at doing improv, and what things upon reflection should I start doing a little bit more of? And I've thought about this through two different lenses. The first is, what did I do when I first started out doing improv? And secondly, what are the things I'm trying to do now as part of trying to get better at improv? So what did I do when I first started out on my improv journey? Well, what I tended to do was listen over a number of workshops, find a common thing that I needed to get better at, and then take that into the forthcoming workshops and courses that I was doing and just hone that. So that would be any opportunity to do a scene with someone, even if the workshop itself, the focus of the workshop itself was about something different, I would still take that thing that I had wanted to work on from a few weeks back and try and push that into the scene itself. So for example, that might be something like platform, or it might be something like asking questions, or it might be something like doing object work, or bold offers, or opening lines, or focus on turning points. At some point, I would have done a workshop where that's the thing that I wanted to work on, and I would try and drive that into all the scenes that I did for a number of weeks going forward. So I remember doing the Hoopla course, I think it was the level 3 course, with Maria Peters, and that was a fantastic experience about honing the platform, and I became obsessed by ensuring that the who, what, where was in every scene, because when we were coached by Maria, she was very tight in that course on ensuring that we stepped on stage and it was very clear relatively soon into the scene exactly what the platform was, and if we didn't, then you had to go back and do it again. So that, for me, embedded the platform and made me want to focus on that actually for a number of months. So in every scene that I was doing, I became obsessed, and I think that's the right word to use. I became obsessed about getting that platform in place. Now, conversely, I've had time to reflect upon that, and that, of course, was just a training tool. Now, of course, you do want to have platform, but I have learned since that it's not always necessary to be very explicit about your platform. Sometimes the audience can probably get away with 2 out of the 3 legs, possibly, something like that. I remember once doing a workshop with Ed Pithy of Dingbats, and throughout this particular workshop, Ed side coached me mercilessly about asking questions, or in fact, me not asking questions. And I remember that workshop very, very distinctly and made it my mission for the forthcoming weeks and months ahead to not ask questions in scenes. Now, that's quite difficult to break when you're a novice, a beginner, but actually over time, it almost had the reverse effect. I found that I couldn't even play games like the questions game that some improvisers might be aware of, where you line up and it's between 2 people and you can only have an interaction where you ask a question. And if you make a statement or it's not a question, then you are out. But I actually now struggle with that game because it's now been so embedded in me not to ask questions. Now, again, conversely, later on, I, as an improviser now, am able to make a choice if I want to ask a question or not. So what the training has done is it's allowed me to consciously be aware when I'm asking a question, so that at least I'm not throwing it out there, I'm able to ask a question of the other improviser, knowing, consciously knowing that I am actually asking a question and it's not in any way unnecessarily and unduly putting them on the spot. And then I remember focusing on bold offers, in particular opening lines, which at one of the workshops or courses that we did with Ed at Dingbats, we would seek to get opening lines from a range of different sources. So I remember one week there was a singer who had done, I think, a TED talk. I can't remember exactly. So if anyone has the right answer, then do please let me know. And the singer opened their TED talk with a line, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit. I see myself as a radio transmitting to the universe. And that was such a wonderful opening line that you could potentially use in an improv scene. And again, that made me go away and think about opening lines that I could use. And I combine that with object work as well in the same sort of sense. Can I come on stage with a line, a bold offer, and or some form of object work which would give reason to why I was there, and of course aid the platform and who my character was, etc. So again, that was something else I worked on. I would take at the workshop or the course and then work on for the next weeks or months, and that would be my primary focus as an improviser starting out. The other thing I tended to focus on as well for a period of time was on turning points or confessions. So being consciously aware of creating a turning point so as to aid the relationship I had with the other character on the stage. And again, I would find many scenes, jams, shows to try and consciously think about a turning point or confession. Now, of course, the mistake I made early on, and sometimes even to this day as well, actually, I catch myself doing this, is jumping to the turning point or confession a bit too soon before a relationship, an environment, an atmosphere is properly created. But again, that was something that I wanted to work on as well. And I would use a whole range of workshops, courses, jams. So even if the focus of the workshop itself by the coach or the teacher was something different, I would still go in and want to hone the thing that I had learned a week, 2, 3 weeks ago. I wanted to hone that in the workshop and use the opportunity to be doing scenes with people to try and embed that particular aspect of the improv that I wanted to work on. Now, recently I was very lucky to do a course with Liz Allen of Second City alumni, who, if you go and look her up, she's got an incredible wealth of experience and people she's worked with, taught by Del Close and Chana Halpern as well. And I asked Liz what sort of things she did when she was first starting out. What sort of things did she practice? How did she practice when she was first doing improv back, I guess, late 80s, early 90s? And she said she would choose something that she had learnt from a workshop and then shoehorn that into every single scene that she did, whether it be a show, a jam just for a few minutes slot, whatever it happened to be. She actually used the word shoehorned to try and ensure that she was always practicing that one thing that she had picked up a few weeks or months beforehand, just so that she could get used to doing that and it becoming part and parcel of the way that she did improv. And that was a really interesting insight. So then the second lens that I wanted to focus on today was, now that I've been doing improv for a number of years, what now? How do I practice now? What should I be doing? And I think now I've moved into new facets of improv that allow me to practice things on my own. So, for example, I've spoken in a previous podcast about wanting to develop my range repertoire of characters. And I do that by either doing that in front of the mirror at home, honing the stance, the voice, the position of the character, the facial expressions. And I also do that with my kids as well. So we set ourselves challenges once in a while to come up with new characters. Then we video our characters and we get those characters interacting with other people as well, just to sort of bring them out a little bit more. Some of those characters I have actually used, and you'll be pleased to know for those people who've listened to my previous podcast about developing the repertoire. So I'm no longer just using my 3 stock characters, but there are some which just don't work or I don't foresee that I would use again. And that's something that I can practice at home. I was also recently on a wonderful musical improv course with some fellow dingbats improvisers, hosted by George and John. And that course allowed me to do practice at home. So if you were doing a hoedown or a sailor's drinking song, you could take the chords and the melody separately, download them. I did that onto my phone, and then just practice that at home. And that was quite easy to do without the need for other improvisers to be there with me. Something else I've been working on as well is tropes in different genres. And this follows a workshop that Gamez, the Hoopla house team up in London, I'm very proud to be part of, had a rehearsal with the wonderful Chris Mead, excellent improviser and teacher. And we focused our rehearsal on different genre tropes. And that was really, really insightful for me. It allowed me to think about the different characters within a Western or a sci-fi or a film noir, rather than simply just going to the default position you might have. So, for example, a Western might have two people just there as gunslingers. Actually, are there other characters within a Western that you might want to use as well? And actually, by going back home and writing my little improv book, which I now need to get another improv book because that's quite full now, I was able to write down different types of characters or tropes within certain genres. So for a Western, clearly you can still use your gunslinger, but you could also have the barman, you could have the hussy, you could have the bank manager, you could have the stranger from out of town. You can have all these different characters just by sort of sitting down and thinking about what characters would be in each type of genre. So again, that doesn't need other improvisers to practice with. That's something you can just do at home. And there's many, many more things that I can sort of take and do at home. So now I'm in this situation where I can still hone things on stage that I've learned in workshops and courses. And by God, there's still things that I've still got to work on very hard. And even some of those things that I thought were quite basic and I thought I'd got over, nope, still need to go and do some of that. But equally, there are also now things that I can just do at home as well. And that freedom I've now got where I'm not thinking I can't do any of this unless I've got somebody else with me to practice is really good indeed. And that has really helped me certainly push on the tropes, the musical improv, and the character stuff as well. That's allowed me to really push that without being dependent upon having rehearsal time, which of course is still a very, very important thing in terms of practicing. And without it, I have found at times that my performance edge has slipped a bit. So trying to find people you want to rehearse with, plus rehearsal space that's not very expensive, that latter bit being quite difficult, are really important in order to test drive some of the things you've been either working at home on your own or working with other improvisers too. So I'd be very keen to know, how do you practice? What are the things that you do? How difficult is it for you to practice? Please let me know. I'd be very keen to see what works for you, what doesn't, and indeed if I can pilfer or steal any of your ideas. So thanks very much for listening to the Nano Film Improv podcast, and I'll catch you in the next one.